it really got me thinking. And I thought, there is a message out there that just kind of pounds on this, step-parents shouldn't ever have authority.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of actually kind of creating some of that message. And I've talked about different ways we can look at authority. I've talked about how maybe sometimes we can try to focus more on influence. And I still think some of those things are true. But I got to thinking, is it okay for a step-parent to want to have some authority with their stepkids? And really, the answer actually is yes, It is okay. Because, it's really tough sometimes being a step-parent where you feel like you have a whole lot of responsibility, but no authority. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your step family from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of step family life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. Before we jump into this episode, we want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Megan for being the very first member of our Patreon community, as well as Nathan for being the second member of our Patreon community.
You.
We are so grateful for you supporting the mission of reaching more blended family couples with valuable resources. Now, if you're listening to this and you aren't sure exactly what Patreon is, it's just simply a place where you can go and support the mission of helping blended family couples just like you. You can join us for as little as $4 a month, and we'll offer some special benefits to you depending on your level of support. And once you join, you'll be part of a community where we're going to work to give you some extra content and some behind-the-scenes insights as we continue to create more valuable resources for blended families. So we'll link to Patreon in the show notes if you want to go check that out.
Yeah, that's right. And by supporting us, you also help to keep us ad-free.
That's right.
So that's always a good
Yay.
thing. And we would love to have you join our community there. All right, so let's get started on today's episode.
Yeah.
Now, honey, you have had a lot of thoughts as you've evolved as a step parent and learned things the hard way and taken your punches along the way. You've had a lot of thoughts and insights about authority and influence when it comes to step parenting.
Yep.
And now lately, you've had some thoughts that have even been a little bit different.
Yeah.
I've noticed that you've kind of gone to another level.
Sure.
And can you just share with us about that?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. A while ago, we were either emailing or talking with a woman about wanting to get some coaching. And she was really excited about that. And we gave her the information. She said, great, I'm going to get back to you. But when she came back, she said, well, I talked to my husband about that, and he didn't want to connect with you guys because he already knows that you're just going to tell him that he needs to back off when it comes to authority with the stepkids, and he doesn't want to hear that again. And it really got me thinking, and I thought, there is a message out there that just kind of pounds on this, step-parents shouldn't ever have authority.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of actually kind of creating some of that message. And I've talked about different ways we can look at authority. I've talked about how maybe sometimes we can kind of try to focus more on influence. And I still think some of those things are true. But I got to thinking, is it okay for a step-parent to want to have some authority with their stepkids? And really, the answer actually is yes, it is okay. Because, it's really tough sometimes being a step-parent where you feel like you have a whole lot of responsibility, but no authority.
Yeah, I mean, even the term step parent or the role of step parent seems to be a bit of a misnomer. I mean, you have a significant position with your spouse, right?
Right.
But you aren't really a parent to your stepchildren. You come in.
Especially early on.
Yeah, you come in and you don't have that relationship yet that gives you authority. So, I mean, it's tough.
It is tough. And so I want to kind of change a little bit about how I've talked about this in the past. And the question and the challenge isn't necessarily to figure out whether a step parent should take authority or not. It might be more about, what does healthy authority really look like, and how do we build that healthy authority in an effective way?
A way that works.
Yeah. Again, it's not that I shouldn't necessarily have authority, because over time we actually want to get there. But it's really about how we're going to build that authority over time. And it's something that's based on relationship, not on position. Yeah. Like you just said, okay, you've got this significant relationship with your spouse,
right.
but maybe not with the kids, especially early on.
Yeah.
But we often expect to have a significant relationship because of the position, right?
So true.
And the other tough thing to deal with and kind of talk through is that actually, ultimately, your level of authority isn't set by you. It's also not set by your spouse. It's actually set by your stepkids. So let me explain that for a second.
Step parents don't like to hear that usually.
I know, but hey, we want to deal with that reality.
Yeah.
So one expert, Ron Deal, I love this quote. He says that parents might expect their kids to readily accept discipline from their step parent. And step parents might claim to have as much authority as the parent. But what really counts is how much authority children will accept from the step parent, right? If we're forcing our way onto kids or stepkids, then we're really just having a power play.
Yeah, you're just one more person that's telling them what to do.
Right. But authority, true healthy authority, is something that our stepkids ultimately submit to. I think I learned a little bit about this lesson. Yeah, willingly. I learned a little about this lesson through some mentors that I've had over the years, where they have gained such a high level of trust and openness and honesty with me. Even in my adult years now, I willingly submit to them. If they want to challenge me, if they want to challenge my thinking and have me do something different than what I'm doing, I'm willing to listen to them, and usually I'm going to take their advice.
But why is that?
Because they have built relationship with me, and there's a high level of trust. Yeah. And so that's really what healthy authority is built on.
So what you're saying is that it's okay to want that authority as a step parent. There's nothing wrong with desiring to have that.
Yep.
I mean, often a step parent's motives here are really noble. They want to help their stepchildren grow and learn and be responsible and respectful, but their path to getting there is going to be very different than the bio parent.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we can begin to reach that authority that we're really looking for, and that it's okay for step parents to want. And we're going to build that a little bit differently than just coming in and taking that authority. Right. Those are two very different things. And I also want to say there's a difference between building healthy authority and then that other kind of big message that can tend to be out there is, we just all love each other. Everything is so lovey-dovey. We shouldn't even make a difference between a bio relationship and a step relationship. Why are we even talking
about this?
But that's often not people's experience, and that kind of shuts it down either. It's not a I'm going to take power and I'm going to have authority. It's also not I'm just going to be your buddy. We've got to find a way to have healthy authority where I actually can speak value into this stepchild's life and create a loving relationship at the same time. Yeah. It's a both and, it's not an either or.
Yeah. And this isn't easy to do.
No.
We've got to be intentional and really think about how to approach this.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying, honey, is that you're giving step parents permission to want some parental authority. So that's great news for a step parent, right? It's okay. So where do they start?
Oh, that's a great question. I believe that we need to start by building trust.
Oh, yes.
I think trust is the basis of what we need in order to have healthy relational authority with our stepkids. If they don't trust us, why should they submit to authority? Right? If Ron Deal's quote is correct and our level of authority is directly related to their level of willing submission, then why in the world would they ever willingly submit to somebody they didn't trust?
I mean, we wouldn't do that as adults.
Exactly.
Why do we expect our children to do that?
Exactly. And so that's where, that whole forcing and pressuring and all of that just has to come off the table.
Demanding, coercing. Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the messages of, well, step-parents should just back off and not have authority. I think that's where a lot of those messages come from because there's some truth in it, right?
Sure. But
I think there's times where we've gotten to this point where we feel as step-parents, well, we shouldn't want that authority, but we can build it. It's okay to want it. And that's where we're going to start, is by building trust. And there's interesting thoughts around that we've learned recently around what trust really needs in order to fully exist in a relationship. And there's 3 primary things that we need to build when it comes to trust.
All humans, right? I mean, this
is really of any relationship. Yeah. And so the first one is all about predictability. I've got to be predictable when it comes to relating to my stepchild. When it came to relating to Annika, I needed to show up consistently and predictably. Now, a lot of the research shows that when it comes to trust and relationships, predictability actually means we've got to show up 90% of the time.
Wow.
Like none of us is perfect. And, we have to have grace and forgiveness and all of that for each other. But if we start to get much less than 90% of the time predictably showing up well, then people aren't necessarily going to know how to respond to us and they won't necessarily trust us as much. Yeah. So that means when my teenage stepchild is going through puberty and getting all kinds of hormones and crazy things happening, the one who can show up predictably the best is probably me as a step-parent, right? And we're impacted and they're probably going to hurt our feelings and they're going to be defiant and they're going to do all kinds of things, or maybe they'll kick in that counter will. Maybe it's not defiance, right? About. If you don't know what that's about, then go back a couple of weeks to episode 28.
With our guest, Amanda.
That's right. And check that out. But in the midst of all that, I have the opportunity to be calm, to speak kindly, I can still be firm and kind at the same time and just keep showing up predictably every single time. It also means I'm going to show up predictably in the times when things are going well, and I'm going to laugh and there's going to be lightness and, all that kind of stuff. I can show up well in that moment too. So that's predictability. I'm going to show up consistently and predictably 90% of the time. The second thing that needs to exist for trust is openness. And that just simply means I'm not holding back, as far as I'm not keeping secrets. I'm age appropriately being vulnerable
and honest
about the realities of life. So you and I have had a real focus on authenticity in our family. And some of that was because we didn't really grow up in authentic homes, right? And that's what this openness is about. We've worked really hard to be age appropriately authentic with our kids when it comes to the struggles that we had in our past, when it comes to the struggles and the fears that we have today, right? And that's what openness really is. And the more open you are, the more trust you build. Again, now I'm going to put a caveat. Age appropriately, right?
You don't want to burden your kids.
No.
But you can share little nuggets of truth with your kids. You don't have to dump the whole load. You can share little nuggets. And it just really solidifies the relationship. And as we've both learned, honey, keeping secrets and not being vulnerable destroys trust. I mean, we didn't have high levels of trust in our families of origin because of that.
Yeah, totally. And I'll say one more thing about this idea around openness and authenticity. And that is, look for those times when a child might be struggling with something that maybe you've struggled with
Yeah.
in the past, and just tell them a story.
Share.
Yeah. Openness and authenticity it really comes alive when you just tell a story.
Yeah, it really builds bonds too.
Absolutely. So that's predictability and openness. And then the third one, to build trust, the third element we need is justice. And this is this sense of balance in the relationships. One of the things that can be really challenging for couples in blended families is when we have this sense or worry about favoritism.
Oh, yeah.
And justice can be struck down when there's this feeling that, oh, stepdad is favoring his kids over me.
Yeah.
Like he cares way more about his own kids than he does about his stepkids. And when kids feel that sense of injustice, trust gets torn down.
Yeah.
And so making sure that, you and I as a couple or any couple is really clear on what our family values are, and that we're upholding any kind of consequences equally across the board and those kinds of things. We want to have a real sense of justice.
Yeah.
So as we're building that trust, we've got to be sure that we're focused on predictability, openness, and justice. We're so excited to let you know about something brand new we've created just for you.
We've realized that with so many episodes available here on the show, it might feel a bit overwhelming to find the topics that matter most to you. That's why we've created a simple tool for you to receive a personalized playlist focused on your current struggle or your biggest challenge.
That's right. It's called the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz. You'll answer just a few questions, and based on your responses, we'll email you a curated custom playlist of episodes that are specific to you.
This simple quiz will direct you to the most impactful episodes that pertain to you personally and keep you on track in your journey of discovery, learning, and growth. So, scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes for this episode and click the link to take the Blended Family Breakthrough Quiz today.
Okay, let's get back to the discussion.
Yeah, and what trust really answers, the question it answers for all of us is, am I safe?
Yeah.
We're creating safety when we're taking these steps to build trust with our stepchild.
Yeah, totally. And it's not necessarily that we're physically in danger. We're talking about relational safety here, right? Do I feel safe with being able to be real and be open and be myself?
Do I know they're going to show up predictably?
Yeah. And the more we earn that with a child, then the more authority we start to gain, because as they trust us, they're going to be more willing to submit to whatever ideas, whatever direction sometimes, right? If we have to give direction, they're going to be more willing to submit to maybe our advice when they're struggling or hurting. It all starts with trust. Yeah. And if we don't have these three elements in a trusting relationship, then we're eroding trust. Yeah. And here's the thing, this whole thing about building trust in relationships, it's not an implementation program. Like we're not going to go, okay, we got predictability, openness, and justice. Now let's get our project plan started and we're just going to implement. It's actually a way that you are using these elements to create a space so that you can allow trust to emerge, because it's not an implementation program. Like I said, it's something that just has to emerge over time, but it's not going to emerge if we're not doing the right things.
So back to your relationship, honey, with these mentors that you have trust with and who have a pretty high degree of authority in your life.
Sure.
Would you say that, how did they do this without an implementation program? How did they build trust with you?
Well, both of those guys are they're both very predictable. They've shared lots of stories of their own challenges along the way. And we have a real, the justice piece, we have a real sense of give and take, especially now in our conversations and in the way that we relate to each other. Those three elements definitely just kind of naturally emerged for them. I mean, that's a good question. I think the openness piece was probably the most powerful for me. Yeah.
And you can be open with children.
Yeah.
You can share things and you can ask questions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. So, number one, start by building trust.
That was a long answer to a short question,
important,
wasn't it?
though. All right, honey, then what? What's the next step?
I think that as we're building trust, we've also got to be focused on creating relationship. And I think those are two different things, right? Building trust is answering that question, like you said, of am I safe? But creating relationship is kind of the fun stuff that we get to do. Get really curious about stepkids' likes and their hobbies and stuff like that, even if you don't like them, right? There were things I remember Annika when she was really into basketball. Like, if you're listening and you've never listened before, I am not a sports guy. Stop laughing at me. I am not good at sports. I didn't grow up around sports. I grew up in the band and she was really into basketball, and right up the road, we've got this basketball hoop, and she would want to go, shoot hoops. And I'm lucky if I can play, what's that game? Horse, like where you go around the key and try to make the shots. I'm barely even able to do that. But you know what? There were times where even if I was just catching the rebounds for her and throwing them back to her, I was there. I was with her. I was focused on her hobby, not on whether I liked to do her hobby or not.
And bio parents have to do this all the time. We have to be interested in crazy things that our kids are interested in, whether whether it's our thing or not.
Yeah, totally.
So you're just asking step parents to do the same. And it's really letting your stepchild know that you enjoy being with them and you care about what's important to them.
Totally. Yeah. I agree with that. And it's also about, nothing creates laughter and lightness if you're humble enough to put yourself in a little bit of an awkward or embarrassing position. Like, I'm terrible at basketball and she knew it and she laughed at me. Right. And I think the whole neighborhood who was watching probably laughed at me as well. But I didn't care because that relationship was worth that momentary embarrassment. And so, man, what an incredible investment into just creating some relationship and some shared experience and that kind of thing. Just being willing to put myself out there.
Yeah. And it spoke volumes to her when you were willing to go there. And do that.
And I think also when you stay curious and you enter into their world, you create an opportunity for deeper conversations. So if we stay with the basketball example for a minute, she and I were at a parent-child camp once, and you know this story well.
Yeah, it was impactful.
And there was this time we were supposed to have free time together, and I was looking forward. We were going to have this great, deep conversation of what I really wanted. I had an agenda. I totally had a plan. Oh, yeah, I was planning it and all of that. And we get to this time and I'm like, well, hey, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And she's like, oh, I think I want to go shoot hoops. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously,
where was your disappointment level at that moment?
It was really bad. I was really frustrated because that's not at all what I wanted to do. And there were like the way the setting was, all these other fathers and daughters up on the hill with their little chairs having their little conversations. And I'm thinking, great. Not only are they doing what I was thinking we were supposed to be doing, but also they're all watching me who can't hit a basket to save his life, right? So then
the
I'm
embarrassment.
Also embarrassed. Yeah. But the thing was that lasted like maybe 10 minutes. And then she said, oh, that's enough. Do you want to go sit down and talk? Like, yeah, of course. That sounds great. And we went and talked, and we had probably one of the most profound conversations we've ever had. And all because I think we ended up there because I was willing to just take that 10 minutes of embarrassment and really focus on creating the relationship and allowing her to go first and entering into her world. So I think, if we could just do those two things, if we could just build trust and we could create relationship and we focus on that, we might be amazed when we look back after doing that and I'll say it's going to take months and maybe years.
Sure.
Especially if you're just in the beginning stage. But when you get to a point in the future where you look back and you go, I'm so glad I focused on building trust and creating relationship. And it was hard sometimes. But now I've got the deepest relationship, even deeper than I would have imagined. And that's been true for me and Annika. And I've seen that come true for other step parents as well, who are really focused in this way.
And what I love about that basketball story at camp is that you let go of your agenda. You were willing to release
that was
it,
hard.
but you did. And not only did you let go of the agenda, but you met her where she was at.
Yeah.
And that's what created that opportunity for a deeper connection, which is hard to do as adults. We want to coerce our kids into doing what we want to do.
Yep.
And so because you were willing to do that, even though it wasn't easy, I know you struggled, the result was something really beautiful.
Yeah, totally. So my big, long description, you summed up great. I met her where she's at.
Yeah.
And I think if any step parent can just take that simple phrase and just remind themselves every morning, how can I meet them where they're at? How can I meet them where they're at?
Yeah.
That might be a great step to just creating that relationship. Yeah.
So while we're on the subject of Annika here, did you ever blow it? When it
Well,
comes,
that's a silly question. You know the answer to that question. Of course I blew it.
Tell us about a time when you didn't do so great with the trust building or the creating relationship with your stepdaughter.
The first thing that comes to mind when you ask about blowing it is I remember there was this time we were in the cost cutter parking lot in the minivan for some reason, and Annika was in the way back seat. And she was doing something. I think it was a respect issue toward you. And cause that's the area when she was younger that really fired me up. And I remember like literally climbing into the back of the van and getting in her face and raising my voice. Like I was ripping trust down in that moment. Bad. It was pretty awful. And I know that she didn't respond that great, and I was feeling pretty crummy. But yeah, of course I messed up. Like nobody's perfect. You're not going to create relationship and build trust perfectly. Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to mess up. Yeah.
So what do you do after you've messed up, or if you're feeling, God, I just blew it? What would you say to step parents that feel like they've blown it?
Well, the first thing we want to have the humility to do is just to apologize. Like we got to own our own stuff, and we're not going to be perfect. We think we have to have it all together. I don't know if this might be wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think sometimes maybe stepmoms especially feel like they have to have it all together.
There's a lot of pressure.
There's all this pressure. Like. There's an expectation that they're going to be just this great, wonderful mom, or they have this expectation that they're supposed to be, the wicked stepmother. And how do you win in that? But the reality is we can't let either of those stereotypes hold us back from one, being real, building trust, creating relationship, and then recognizing that we don't always have to have it all together. Because the reality is sometimes we're going to mess up. And when we do, own our stuff and apologize.
There's no such thing as a perfect bio parent,
right,
or a perfect step parent. We're all going to make mistakes in this journey.
Yeah. It means that when we mess up, we're going to own it. We're going to apologize. Then we're going to have the enough humility and caring to just say, okay, let's move forward. Right. It's okay to let your stepkids see the imperfect, vulnerable spots where you're still growing, right? Yeah. The more you're real with them, the more they have permission to be real with you. And when you do that, you're building trust and you're creating relationship, right? So it all kind of ties together.
And the beautiful thing is kids are so forgiving.
Yeah.
They just, once you tell them, hey, I wish I hadn't have said that.
Yeah.
I messed up. I'm going to try to do better. They're like, oh, okay, great. I mean, it's just, they're so forgiving.
Yeah. I've had to have a lot of grace for Annika over the years, but the truth is she's had to have a lot of grace for me too. And so we've learned a lot together.
So do you remember in this moment in the back of the minivan when you blew up at her, did you come back around and apologize later?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did she respond to that?
She was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was fine. I don't ever remember her like rejecting an apology.
Yeah. Sometimes we think as the adults that it's a sign of weakness, or we shouldn't be apologizing to our kids because then they'll have one over on us or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what we think, why it's so hard, but it's such a healing place to be in relationship. And you're also teaching your kids, you're modeling for them how to take responsibility for themselves when they mess up and make mistakes and need to apologize to their siblings or their friends or to you.
Totally.
So it's an important skill to learn how to own your stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You've asked me a lot of questions in this episode, and it's been kind of that interview style. But I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about step parents trying to build authority. We've given permission to build that authority. They're going to do that through trust and creating a relationship. And sometimes it's not that simple.
No.
Because we're a team as a couple, and we each play a different role. And so as I'm trying to build trust and create relationship, what would you say as a bio parent that you would need to do to help me actually work through this process of gaining that authority?
Well, that's a great question because we are a team. One can't do the job without the other.
Right.
And I really believe that a bio parent can either really help this process along or they can completely sabotage it.
Whoa. There's no middle ground.
Well,
I mean, kidding.
There's middle ground, but
yeah, I know.
A bio parent has a lot of power in this situation because they have that authority with their child.
Right.
And they have the relationship with the step parent. So I would say the first thing that a bio parent can do to really help this situation is step up and be the parent. Take your parental authority. Don't be afraid to discipline and correct your kids when you need to.
In a loving way.
In a loving way, in a way that's an authoritative parent. And if you don't know what that means, Google it. What is an authoritative parent?
Or you can go back and listen to the Parenting Styles episode.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll link that in the show notes for you so you can go check it out.
But step up and do your job as the parent. Early on, honey, we really struggled with this. And it was so hard for you to sit back and build a relationship with Annika when I was a permissive parent. She was basically running the show. There was no parenting going on.
Right.
And that was so hard on you.
It was hard for me. I wanted, and actually this is a good story. I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to just take the authority. Early on, I actually didn't want to spend the time to build the trust and create the relationship. I just wanted to take authority. Part of that was because that's what my stepmom did, and that's what I witnessed. The main reason I didn't wasn't because I was just some great guy who knew what I was supposed to do. It was because we actually went and got help.
We did.
And we went to a seminar and we learned about this. And I remember so many moments wanting to take control, but going, no, that's not what Ron Deal said. I can't do that.
It doesn't work.
and it was really hard on me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until later, probably a couple years in, where you really started going, oh, I need to really step up on the authority side as a bio parent.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to be able to relax and actually be able to focus on building trust and creating relationship.
Yeah. So
that's
if you're,
great point.
bio parents need to claim their parental authority and step up. Kids need discipline. They need healthy limits and boundaries. It's a loving thing to do. So that's a definite must because otherwise the step parent is just going to struggle and be frustrated and feel like, man, you know.
It's not impossible. If your partner's not willing, it's not impossible to build trust and to create relationship and all that as a step parent. But man, if you're working as a team, it goes so much better.
Yeah. You're going to have a lot of conflict too if the parent isn't taking the authority.
Totally.
Yeah. And then the second thing I would say, which, this was so important for us too, honey, is listen to your partner. a lot of times, you would come to me with, hey, what do you think, about Annika's behavior the other night when she wasn't listening to you and refused to help out and just kind of stormed off, what?
I would bring it up.
Yeah, you would bring it up. And I would get so defensive and don't tell me how to parent my kid. And this is none of your business because it hurt my feelings.
Sure.
And so as a bio parent, it is hard to hear anything critical from the step parent. But what I learned and what I wish I had learned earlier is that your feedback really made me a better parent. If I was more willing to listen and take it in instead of getting defensive and getting my feelings hurt, because you uncovered my parental blind spots. We all have parental blind spots. There is no such thing as a perfect parent.
Right.
And I had a lot of blind spots. I was parenting on fear and guilt from the past, and I wasn't doing a good job with my daughter. And you were trying to point it out, but for a long time, I just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So listen to the perspective of the step parent.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you always have to take the perspective of the step parent, but listening works really well. And I'd say when I felt listened to, there were moments where I, was able to share my opinion, and I was also able to get on your side if we disagreed. I was able to say, hey, here's what I think, but you choose what you're going to do, and then I'll back you up. And when I know that you listened to me, it was way easier to back you up.
That's interesting. Yeah. So don't shut yourself off to the perspectives of the step parent.
Yeah.
You know your kids. Your step parent doesn't know them as well.
Right.
But they still see things. They still see your blind spots. And try not to get overly defensive or get your feelings hurt when they're pointing some things out. And don't jump to, oh, you just don't like my kids.
Right.
That's a place we see bio parents go too. And that can be really destructive when you just jump to some of these negative beliefs and then you're not working as a team.
Yeah.
So invite the step parent into your parenting struggles and work as a team.
Yeah.
It is doable.
Yep, that's great.
We figured it out,
That's great.
But it isn't always easy. So that would be my advice to the bio parent.
That's great advice. So, overall, if you're a step parent, you're listening and you're wrestling with this whole authority thing. Do I take authority? Do I not take authority? How do I get authority? All of that. First of all, again, I just want to remind you, it's okay to want that authority and to be respected and to experience that. And the way to get to it in a healthy way that we've discovered, not only in our own journey, but in working with other couples, is we're going to focus on building trust as a step parent. We're also going to create relationship. And when we mess up, we're going to own our stuff. We're just going to apologize and we're going to be real with the kids.
Own it and move on.
That's right. And if we really want to supercharge our ability to do this, then we're going to have a great partnership. And our bio parents, our partner, is going to do what?
Step up, take your parental authority, and don't be afraid to discipline your kids. Be firm and loving. You can be an authoritative parent and listen to your partner's perspective.
That's
so important to work as a team.
That's right. So hopefully this has been a valuable episode for you. This is a challenging conversation. That's why we just wanted to make it a conversation today. But hopefully that's valuable. And if you need some help, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find us on our website. You can email us. You can even just go right in and schedule a free consultation with us.
Yeah. And remember to subscribe and leave us a rating or a review. And make sure that you join us next week, right? We're going to have another challenging conversation next week, but it's going to be really great because we're going to talk about all of the challenges of both the bio and the step parents in both of your kids' homes.
Oh, boy.
Yep, we're going there. We're going there
Talking
big.
about exes, huh? And more.
Yeah, and it's not just about co-parenting, but we're focused on creating more peace in both the homes, more peace for our kids, more peace for us. And we want to gain some new perspectives, some valuable insights in how we can navigate the relationships with all of the adults that are involved in raising our kids, because this is an important topic.
Oh, man. Is that going to be like a 4-hour episode or what?
No,
great.
but it will be chock full of some really great tips.
Awesome. All right. Well, then that makes this episode a wrap.
Until next time.